Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where once again, StarCourse takes on a few extra layers of meaning in today's spooky and stellar class. With Halloween right around the corner, we have the pleasure of being rejoined by Fatima, educator at the Pacific Science Center in Seattle, Washington, who's going to show us that if we really want to learn the history of Halloween, we'll need to look to the stars. Now, before we get started, there are just a few things that we'll want to keep in mind to make sure we're making the absolute most out of today's live lesson. First of all, you may have questions throughout the lesson, and Fatima's going to have a few questions for you. So feel free to use the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen to both ask and answer questions throughout the lesson. And if we don't get to those questions right away, not to worry, we're going to save about 10 minutes at the end of the lesson for Q&A. You'll also want to make sure that you have your cameras nearby, or a friend or a parent with a camera phone, because toward the end of the lesson, we're going to have the opportunity to lean into the screen and pose for a selfie. And if you post those selfies on Instagram and you tag us here at Varsity Tutors, as well as the Pacific Science Center, you'll be entered to win a 1-month membership to the after-school club of your choice. We'll talk a little bit more about that prize and some of the specifics on how to enter toward the end of the lesson. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and pass things off to your instructor for today, Fatima.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Haley. Hello, everyone. Just one more time, my name is Fatima, and I am joining today from a science museum here in Seattle, Washington, called Pacific Science Center. And I am so excited to be joining Varsity Tutors again for another program here in our planetarium. For our program, like Haley mentioned a little bit ago, we are going to be taking a look at learning about the science astronomy, which is all about outer space. And to do this, we'll be using our virtual planetarium. Now, thinking about astronomy, that science about outer space, what are some things we think we might study out in space? What are some things we might be able to find if we were imagining ourselves working as an astronomer? You have an idea, some things we might be learning about here. Feel free to share with me those ideas here in chat. I see some cool ideas we've got thinking about the sun. Yes, we had a nice clue here in our planetarium. The sun and other stars are a great thing to study here in astronomy. Thinking about maybe new planets, quasars, black holes. I love it. Now, some of these ideas are thinking about things that are super big and super far away. For today, we're going to be focusing on a really special type of astronomy called naked eye astronomy. So this means we'll be practicing making some observations using just our eyes. So no need for any special tools like telescopes and binoculars. Now, before we get started though, I do have a question for our group. Who here is really excited to celebrate Halloween this weekend on Sunday? Anyone? If you're feeling super excited, feel free to give me a big yes there in chat, maybe some exclamation marks. Nice. If you're someone who's feeling really excited, you can even, if you'd like, share with me maybe any costumes you're super excited to be dressing up as. I'm seeing a bunch of those yeses starting to come in. Ooh, lots of exclamation marks. I know I'm feeling really excited about Halloween myself, but I do have a question here. So we're doing a planetarium show thinking about the science astronomy, and I'm curious, do our scientists tuning in today, do you think that Halloween really has any connections to astronomy? If you're thinking yes, you can let me know in chat. You can tell me no, give me a big maybe or I don't know here. Oh, nice. I'm seeing some yeses coming in. Yeah, so maybe some of those hints from Haley earlier kind of gave that away, or I am seeing a few maybes. Well, the answer really is yes. So Halloween does indeed have some connections to astronomy, and that makes it a really great holiday to celebrate here in the planetarium. As we're taking a look here, we'll be learning a little bit about that history. And actually, to start, Halloween comes from a holiday, a Celtic holiday that was celebrated a long, long time ago called Samhain. So Samhain was a holiday originally celebrated in parts of Ireland, Scotland, and other parts of like North Europe. And Samhain, this holiday that we celebrate, actually gives us some of the traditions that we use today for our modern Halloween. This includes things like dressing up in costumes or carving jack-o'-lanterns. Actually, I do have an interesting history challenge here. Thinking about those jack-o'-lanterns, for the original holiday Samhain, do we have any guesses what type of crop was originally used to carve jack-o'-lanterns? You can share your guess here in chat. So you can type out a number 1 if you're thinking maybe apples, 2 for turnips, or 3 for pumpkins. What do we think? What were those original jack-o'-lanterns made of? Ooh, nice. I'm seeing some guesses for 1, those apples. I'm seeing some 2s. Well, a few of us are typing out a couple different numbers. Yeah, so maybe we could use a few of these different options here. I'll go ahead and reveal our answer here in a couple moments. So if you still need to type in that answer, go ahead and do it. And I'll reveal here in 3, 2, 1. All right, scientists, if you were thinking number 2 there, turnips, go ahead. Everyone for guessing, give yourselves a round of applause. But yeah, that original answer was turnip. So I see a few of us were able to guess that. So actually, originally jack-o'-lanterns were carved using root vegetables. So that includes turnips and radishes. Now, I found a pretty cute one here, but some of the old ones were a little creepy, so I'm pretty grateful that we use pumpkins now, which is actually a tradition that started when Irish immigrants came here to North America, which is where our pumpkins are originally from. So some fun customs and traditions we have for Halloween, but like we started to mention, all of these traditions are going to have something to do with some changes we can observe here on Earth. And this is where our astronomy starts to come in. And so to explore where we get some of these celebrations, we're going to come here in our planetarium. And right now in my planetarium, I have my location set to where I'm at here in Seattle, Washington. But no matter where you're learning from today, you'll be able to make some similar observations as long as you're in the northern hemisphere, so north of the equator. So that includes all of the US, in Europe, and a good stretch of the world here above that equator. Now, in my planetarium, I also have us set to our current time. So for those of us here on the West Coast, it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's going to be a little later for any friends joining further east. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start fast forwarding that time. So we'll start to see what the sky will look like as we go through later in the day. And as time is moving forward, I am curious, scientists, what do you start to notice happening? If you have an observation, feel free to share that here in chat. Nice, the sun is moving, the sun's setting. Ooh, it's getting darker. Absolutely. Ooh, we're seeing some stars. Nice. So as the sun was moving here and all these stars, I have a question. Do we really think the sun was what was moving, or was it something else? So what do we think? What's actually moving here? Why are we noticing these changes in our sky? Oh, nice. I'm seeing some of our scientists sharing that it's actually the Earth moving. Yeah, so absolutely. Our planet Earth is what's going to be making the movement that changes what we can see in our night sky. And these changes are a great example of some of the observations we can make day and night and all throughout the year. So thinking about our Earth moving here, giving us this nice view of our sun coming across the sky, that's one type of movement our Earth can make, and that's called our rotation, right? So thinking about Earth spinning around on its axis, giving us day and night. Does anyone have any ideas? What other types of movement can Earth make? So we talked about our rotation, that spin that gives us day and night. Do we have any ideas? What else is Earth doing out in space? I see a few guesses coming in. For any scientists needing a hint, remember our rotation gives us day and night. there's something bigger our planet does that gives us a whole year. Nice. I'm seeing a couple different words coming in. I'm seeing the words revolution and orbit. Absolutely. So those are both going to be words that we can use to describe the same thing. So thinking about Earth going around the sun. Oh, I do also see someone mentioning the tilt of the Earth. Yeah, scientists, if you were thinking about Earth's tilt, save that really good information in your minds here, because we're going to be using that information in a little bit. Let's start with that orbit or that revolution. So thinking about how that gives us a year, we'll need to zoom out here in my space view. So I'll go ahead, add in some labels and lines, and then we'll go ahead and come out here to our solar system. So now in that corner, we can see all those different circles, all those different planet orbits going around the sun. And Earth is going to be included in that. And so as Earth is going around the sun, it is going to cause some changes that we can see in the night sky. That's because there's some really important parts along that orbit. First of all, if we take a look at two really big places, we have our solstice marks. So thinking about our summer solstice, which for us here in the north is going to be when the northern hemisphere is pointed closer towards the sun. And we have our winter solstice, which is when our north pole is going to be tilted away from the sun. And we can see that's not only just because of our orbit moving, but for our scientists earlier who mentioned Earth also has a tilt, this also affects how we feel those seasons, right? So as Earth is moving on its orbit, that tilt that we were noticing there isn't going to change in our lifetime. And so that's why we experience that change in our seasons. Now we've talked about our summer and winter seasons. Can y'all let me know in chat, what are the other two we need to add here to our little map around our orbit? So we've got our summer solstice, our winter solstice. What are our other important parts along our orbit? Nice. I'm seeing some guesses for fall and spring. Yeah, absolutely. So those are going to be our two midway points, right? So if we take a look, we'll zoom out just a bit further here, and we'll add in those 2 points here. And so our equinoxes is what we call our start of spring and fall. And so these are going to be the parts of our orbit where we actually receive pretty equal amounts of daylight and night. So we're going to be seeing pretty much split right down the day here. Now, these are probably the 4 spots we're most familiar with using. That's because these are the 4 spots we use today to really describe the starts of our seasons, right? So for here in the Northern Hemisphere, that fall equinox happens in September, that winter solstice happens in December, and so forth. But there's some additional spots here on our orbit that are super important and lead to some really interesting observations. We're going to add those to our map here. And these are called our cross quarter days. Now, thinking about one cross quarter day that's coming up this week, we have one on October 31st. You'll see it here on our map, kind of right in between that fall and winter point in our orbit. Does anyone remember any exciting holidays happening on October 31st? If you do, let me know in the chat what's happening on that day. So not only are we in between fall and winter, that's right, I see it in the chat there, we have Halloween on this day. So actually Halloween is going to be marked along our orbit. It's a day along our orbit where we are in between fall and winter. And so there are some big changes we can see happening in our night sky during this time along our orbit. We're going to go ahead and come back into our planetarium to take a look at what those changes are. So we've got our planetarium set up here. Now I'm going to make a couple changes here first. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that movement of the sun looks like during one of our solstices. Let's actually go ahead and go back to summer. So coming here in my planetarium, I'm going to go ahead and change our date so that it is a month in summertime. So we'll go ahead and make it June here. So our 6th month, so let me change it. There we go. And we'll go ahead and make it the 21st of June, so that summer solstice here. Now, scientists, I'm going to have us take a look and watch the sun as it moves here on this first day of summer. And I'm going to do that by turning on, let's see, our cardinal points. And so scientists, go ahead and point to the letter S here on screen. That's going to be our point for south. And then take a look over nearby. We have southwest and west. So scientists, taking a look at those 3 directions, I want you to type into chat the letter where we see the sun set. Okay, so is the sun going to set in the south, the southwest, or the west? Oh, I already see some guesses here. Nice. Some of us saying west. We already know the sun's moving in that western direction. Love it. Let's go ahead and fast forward that time though. Are you ready? So keeping an eye on that sun, maybe pointing at it with your finger, tracing it along, and we'll speed up time here. Nice. And I see some really exciting questions in the chat will come up too as soon as we have this sun set. All right, so following that sun, keeping an eye on the letters here. So which direction? Nice. I see a lot of us are noticing it's coming over towards the west. Let's wait for that exact sunset just to be sure. All right, here we go. So we're setting on this day, June 21st, so earlier this summer. Nice. I am seeing more of our scientists saying the sun set over in the west. Great observations. So our sun was all the way over here in our planetarium by the time it set here in June. Now also, I'll make a note of the time our sun set. So here in the planetarium, we use a 24-hour clock. So if you take 23 and subtract 12, we've got the time 11 o'clock. So it wasn't until 11 o'clock at night that the sun was completely out of our sky here in the month of June. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a day here in fall. Can someone let me know in the chat? Go ahead and give me one of the months that's included in that season. So one of our fall months. Nice. I see some of us mentioning October. Yeah, why not go with our current one? We're right in the middle of fall right now, aren't we? So let's go ahead. We'll reset things here. So we'll go ahead and make it October. And we'll go ahead and make it tonight. So October 26th. And let's go back a few hours so we can bring back that sun. So earlier today. Now scientists, just like we did before, keep an eye on those markers, that south, that southwest, and that west, okay? And we're going to see which direction the sun sets down closest to. So we know the sun's gonna move in the western direction, but is it going to make it all the way to the west? Let's see. All right, so our time's starting to slowly move forward. I'll go ahead and move us a little bit faster. So keeping an eye, tracing that sun, where it's going, and let me know in chat, where do you see it going below that horizon? Nice. I see some of us are mentioning that southwest this time. So look how much further towards the south the sun made it this time. So it didn't get all the way over to the west. And take a look at that time here on my clock. Instead of saying 23, it says 18. So for our 24-hour clock, if you subtract 18 from 12, you're going to get 6. So just a few minutes after 6 o'clock, we have our sun already starting to set. So what does that mean? Do we think we have more daylight in the summer? Or do we have more daylight as we start to go towards winter? So when do we see more sun here in the north? Nice. I'm seeing some guesses coming in for the summer. Yeah, so as we move through the seasons, going from summer to fall to winter, through those seasonal changes, as we move along our orbit, we start to see less sunlight. And that's because of our orbit and that tilt that some of our scientists mentioned in the chat a moment ago. So actually, when we think about those cross quarter days we saw earlier, that one right in between the fall equinox and the winter solstice, the day that we celebrate Halloween, it's actually the darkest of the 4 cross quarter days. And these really dark nights have actually led to some of the traditions and beliefs we have surrounding Samhain and its modern day cousin Halloween. So some of these darker nights, for example, led to some mythology and folklore, talking about spirits being able to walk among the living on this one day of the year. And this is why we have things like costumes and jack-o'-lanterns to help protect us from those things, all those uninvited spirits. We also here on this marker, this cross-quarter day, have the last day of the Celtic summer. So here for us in the US today, we have those 4 seasons. But for those celebrating Samhain, we would have shortened that to the end of summer and the beginning of winter. So either way, whichever calendar you're using though, this end of October is also the end of our harvest season, right? So the end of our growing season. And so Halloween is also often associated with some traditions with celebrating the end of the harvest or that season. And all of these traditions really come from observations we can make while looking here at our night sky. So scientists, we've got about half of our time left for our program before we go to our questions and answers. I do see, though, a really interesting question here in chat that was shared, asking, what do I think is the coolest thing we have found in outer space? Okay, that is a really cool question there. I don't know if I have an exact answer. That's a hard one. There's been so many cool things to come from outer space. I think if I had to pick something, we're going to get really off topic here for just a second. Don't mind me. I think my absolute favorite thing that's been discovered has to do with one of our moons hanging out here by the planet Saturn. So by Saturn, we have a planet called Enceladus. Oops, I'm going to stop our orbit. And Enceladus out here actually has some really cool things, including water. So this one moon really far out in the solar system has all the ingredients needed to possibly support life. Now, we haven't found life here for sure, but if I had to answer what I think the coolest thing is, I think it really might be finding those cool ingredients to life out here, out in our outer solar system. Great question. So yeah, if you have more questions, please keep sharing those in the chat. We'll be sure to make some time for them at the end of our program to check in on those. Now, for our last 20 or so minutes here, I would love for us to practice making some of those observations that actually inspired those Halloween traditions we've been talking about. So thinking about some things we could see in our night sky tonight, or actually this Halloween on Sunday, I should say, that would have been things we could have seen a long, long time ago for those ancient Celts who were celebrating Samhain. So to do this, let's go ahead and change our time here to October 31st. So thinking about the very night of Halloween. And let's go ahead and keep our time here right at 6 o'clock. Now, thinking about this time, this is probably when a lot of us are going to be getting ready to start going trick-or-treating. Yeah, is anyone here really excited to be going out for some candy this Halloween? This just right at sunset might be a good time to get started with that. Now, looking here at this time, I'm noticing some things in our sky that are actually showing up really, really bright. And I'm kind of curious if others can try to find those things. So we've got some objects that are really brighter than most of the things around them. And if you're noticing some bright objects, can you let me know which direction are you seeing them in? So remember, we have our cardinal points down here on our horizon, that place where the sky meets the ground. And if you're noticing some bright objects, can you let me know by either typing that letter, or you can type the full direction if you want. I'll give us a moment to kind of explore. Nice. I do see some guesses coming in for the south. Absolutely. So I'm noticing some very bright objects here in the south. Anywhere else from our scientists? Ooh, I see a few of us mentioning over here in the southwest too. We've got this really giant bright ball here. Yeah, does anyone have any guesses what those things might be? So they're so much brighter than the other things we can see around them. So what might they actually be here in the sky? Ooh, nice. I see a few guesses coming in for possible planets. So interesting. Now, if you're thinking about whether or not you're looking at a planet or a star, I do have a tip for you. So if you're out looking in your own night sky and you see something really, really bright, one tip I have is to think about whether or not it's twinkling or if its light is really steady. So for example, taking a look here at some things I know are stars. So we've got this bright object right here. Let me know, is that kind of twinkling? You can type a T into chat if you're noticing kind of going on, off. Or is it looking really steady? So the light just stays on. You can type in a letter S. Nice. I'm seeing a lot of us are noticing it's really is twinkling a lot. Okay, let's compare that to the really bright object we had over here. So we had this object, some of our scientists were noticing in the southwest. Now, do we think it's twinkling as much as that star we were looking at? Or is it more steady? So remember, we can type those letters, either T for twinkling or S for steady. What are we noticing? Nice. I am seeing a lot of S's in the chat. So we're noticing the light here is a lot more steady. So that is indeed a great clue that we have a planet. That's because the light that we see from our planets is actually light that's being reflected from the sun. And so the light from our planets isn't traveling as far as all the light coming from these stars. And so thinking about all of that distance, that's what's going to cause that twinkling to happen. So it's going to actually break up the light as it hits our atmosphere compared to the strong light from our planets that actually stays nice and strong. All right. So we'll go ahead and reveal what these objects were. So if you were thinking they were planets, you are correct. Go ahead and give yourselves a round of applause here. Maybe a little pat on the back. So we have 3 bright planets you can look for at the start of your trick-or-treating this Halloween. The first is going to be Venus down here in the southwest. And then we have 2 further away planets, Saturn and Jupiter over here in the south. So really great guesses and observations there. All right, so scientists, we found a few planets just as we're getting started here with our trick-or-treating night. Let's go ahead and fast forward time even more to see some of the other things in our night sky that we can see during this year's Halloween that would have been up during Halloween and Samhain a long, long time ago. So we'll go ahead and fast forward time. Oh, I'm loving all these questions coming into chat. I am so excited to get to these. Nice. Yes, please keep asking them. All right. So we'll go ahead. We'll fast forward just a little bit later in our night. So at this time, you're probably getting ready to end trick-or-treating. You're probably walking back home. It's getting pretty close to about 10 o'clock at night at this point, a little bit later than that even. So probably well past the time anyone wants to be out trick-or-treating. Now, looking over here in the southeast and east, I do have a few of our seasonal constellations and patterns up. that would have been used to help us with figuring out when to celebrate Samhain, so when that season was changing a long, long time ago. To start with this, I'm really curious if scientists can try spotting a constellation that you might be familiar with. So, a constellation in Western astronomy known as Orion. And so, to look for Orion here, we're going to try finding Orion's belt, which is made of 3 stars that are super, super bright and pretty much in a straight line. So take a look, see if you can find 3 stars making a pretty straight line. And if you think you've spotted, let me know where you're looking. So are you over here in the east, over in the southeast, or over here in the south? Nice. So I see some guesses coming in. I'll go ahead and let a few more get in before I start sharing what I'm seeing here. Nice. Okay. I'm seeing quite a few of our scientists mentioning the east. So thinking about the letter E, let's go ahead and face our way over there. So if you're still looking for those 3 bright stars, let's use our friends and that clue to help us out. If you are spotting it, let me know. I see a few more of us in chat saying they see it. Lovely. And I'll go ahead and reveal Orion here in just a moment. In 3, 2, 1. So there are our lines connecting our constellation. And here is our image of Orion. So with those lines and pictures, hopefully it's a little bit easier to see. So we've got those 3 stars really twinkling here in Orion's belt. And we also have some other really bright stars around the constellation, like this blue star, Rigel, and this orange star up here, Betelgeuse, which is actually a massive, huge star here in the armpit of Orion. Now, Orion is an example of one of our winter constellations. So here in the northern hemisphere, I should say, Orion is a winter constellation. And I say that because we actually share Orion with the southern hemisphere. So during our winter time, Orion is up in our sky. And during our summertime, Orion is going to be down in the southern hemisphere skies. So for our friends in places like Australia or South Africa, Chile. Now, Orion being a winter constellation for us in the north, we start to see his pattern coming up in our sky. That's a pretty good clue that we're starting to get further and further in that winter season. I see some of us mentioning that they're noticing Betelgeuse. They're shining really bright, up here in that arm. Now, Orion is going to be actually following, though, some of our easier to find constellations that are up in the fall. So right now for Halloween. And so we can see some of them here right now with our pictures and lines. Let's go ahead and turn our pictures off. Let's go ahead and make things a little trickier. So I'll first start off our pictures. And give me a Y for a yes in the chat if you're still seeing Orion with just those lines there. So you can still kind of imagine that warrior here. Nice. Okay, so I see we're still noticing Orion here. What if I make it even harder? We'll turn off those lines completely. Can you still make out Orion here? Nice. Okay, so we've got Orion here. We're going to use this now to actually help us find some of those fall constellations that we were talking about. So some constellations and patterns that have helped us with figuring out when Halloween is coming around here in the sky. Now to do this, we're going to try doing some star hopping. So that means we are going to actually use Orion's belt to help us hop over to another star here in our sky. And this is going to be sort of an orangish star, not Betelgeuse. There should be another orangish red star that we're seeing here. And we're going to land on it by drawing that line from Orion's belt straight up. Now, I'm going to go ahead, give you a moment to see if you can draw that line. And then we'll do it together. And so when we're doing it together, I'm going to have our friends at home tell me when to stop drawing my line. So actually, if you want to type in that word stop right now, but don't hit send, just go ahead and type the word stop or the letter S and be ready to hit send when you want me to stop drawing my line. You ready? So Starting down here at Orion's belt and drawing a line straight up. I'm going to go ahead and slowly go up. Ooh, I see some of us wanting to stop over there by Rigel. We're going to keep going until we land on a bright orange star. Don't let me pass it. Nice. Oh, a bunch of stops just came in so fast. I love it. Yes, we have this bright orangish red star here. And if this is the star I was looking for, when I turn my lines back on, we should see some triangle kind of shapes forming around it. Ooh, nice. Well done, scientists. Another round of applause to yourselves, maybe a pat on the back. So it looks like here we found the orange star for Aldebaran. So the eye of one of our zodiac signs, Taurus the bull. Now the reason I wanted to find Taurus is actually because Taurus inside of it is going to have one of the most important star features here in our night sky for Halloween. And that's going to be a star cluster called the Pleiades. So the Pleiades is this giant group of stars, up to actually a couple hundred. Now, we're only going to be able to see about 7 of them. And so we're looking for 7 points of light really close together. And it's going to kind of look like a starry glob. And that cluster lives here inside Taurus. Well, I see some of us in chat mentioning that we are a Taurus. Nice. I love calling out the zodiac signs and seeing if anyone here is one of them. So let's see if we can try finding that star cluster, okay? So go ahead and give me a Y or a yes here in chat first if you can see Taurus nice and clearly. So make sure it's nice and center here on my screen. Perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off our artwork. Go and give me another yes if we're still seeing those lines nice and clear. Lovely. All right, we're going to make it even harder. No more lines. Now take a look. Can you still sort of imagine some of those connected stars that we used? Remember, we had that really interesting one, this orangish red one. That was our star Aldebaran. I see kind of. Yeah, so it gets a little trickier here. Now, thinking about that star Aldebaran, though, focus on that one and see if you can draw a straight line out towards something that kind of looks like a big group of stars, maybe a bunch of little speckles all together. It might look kind of like a fuzzy disk here in our sky. Nice. I'm seeing some Y's in chats and yeses. Okay, let's go ahead and try doing this together with a little more star hopping. So I'll zoom in just a little bit more. And scientists, I'll start here at Aldebaran and I'll draw a straight line out and go ahead and once again, type in that letter S for stop or type in the word stop. So don't hit send just yet, just get it ready there in chat. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and start our star hopping. So starting down here and climbing up. Don't let me pass our group of stars here in the sky. All right. Oh, nice. I love how quickly all of those stops come into the chat. Absolutely right here. Well done, scientists. That is another great job there. Maybe for this one, a little celebration dance. So here in our night sky, we have found the star cluster known as the Pleiades. And this star cluster is used in lots of cultures around the world as a marker for the start of fall really starting to pick up. We're moving closer into winter. So actually for traditional Samhain, remember that holiday where we get a lot of our traditions for Halloween that we celebrate today, a lot of Samhain was actually focused around here on the Pleiades and where it was in our sky. So around this time of year, this is where our Pleiades climbs to its highest point in the sky right at midnight. And actually, as we're taking a look here at our star cluster, before we continue on, I feel like this is a great spot to get one of our selfie pictures. So I'm actually going to ask our friend Haley to come back here. I'm going to turn off my camera because I'm sure we want a picture with the stars, not me here. But Haley, do you want to go over how our friends at home can take that selfie and get entered in?
I sure do. So as a quick reminder, while everyone is getting their phone or their camera at the ready, if you post these selfies on Instagram and you tag us here at Varsity Tutors as well as the Pacific Science Center, you will be entered to win a 1-month membership to the after school club of your choice. So whether you'd prefer to explore the stars a little more in Cosmic Adventure Club, or you'd like to branch out and learn a little bit more about history, about science, about the way the world works, there is a club for you. Now those tags are up on screen for you just beneath the chat, but I'll also have them up on screen at the very close of the lesson. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys see that cluster of stars front and center.
Awesome. Thanks, Haley. All right, so we've got our Pleiades right here, nice and big. So go ahead and grab that picture. We'll give everyone a few moments here, making sure you have the right angles as we're taking our selfies. Some really fun stories here about the Pleiades, sometimes called our 7 sisters or 7 maidens. And I mentioned earlier, we can only really see 6 points of light with our own naked eye. And that's because one of the 7 stars that we used to be able to see here in the Pleiades has actually sometimes gotten covered up by some gas floating around it, or some dust, I should say. So kind of the flickering in and out. All right. We'll give a few more moments here of our Pleiades. Go ahead and bring down another part of our cluster here. Getting some great selfies with the star, or the mini stars, I should say, of the Halloween night sky. All right. So yeah, hopefully you were able to get a good picture that you're happy with. I know I am looking forward to getting to see all those pictures coming in. So please, please, please be sure to share. I'm going to go ahead and pop back here on screen though. And we have just a few minutes left before we're going to go ahead and go into our Q&A. So we have a couple more things I'm really excited to share from our night sky. So as we're trick-or-treating, we've now figured out where to look for some planets. We've found some of the constellations and groups of stars to look for that originally were used to help us with observations telling us we were getting close to Halloween. But this time of year also, we have some really exciting things going on in our night sky. First of all, I've seen some questions in the chat about meteors. I'm wondering, has anyone here ever seen a meteor shower or a shooting star? Give me a yes in chat if you've ever been lucky enough to spot one. Anyone here? I know I've spent a lot of time trying to see some. Ooh, I do see some yeses. I see some no's too. That is okay. If you're in a big city like I am, so again, I'm here in Seattle, and Seattle has a lot of light pollution, so a lot of city lights that are on. That can make it kind of hard. But for the next few days, if you can find any time to head out with your family, a little further out from the city, try to find a nice, dark, clear sky. You might be able to see the tail end of a meteor shower called the Orionids. So this shower comes out of the constellation Orion, but you don't have to be looking at Orion to find this meteor shower. So anywhere in the night sky, as long as it's dark enough, until about November 7th. And while this meteor shower isn't the biggest we see in the year, only about 20 or so meteors are shooting stars within an hour. I think it is one of our most interesting. And that's because the meteors we're seeing are actually bits of debris falling into our atmosphere that have been left behind one really famous comet, Halley's Comet. And so we'll be able to actually see a little bit of that comet falling into our atmosphere again until that November 7th date. And so check it out, see if you can find it. Anytime, as long as the sun is set, is a good time to try looking for that shower. The later you can stay up, the better. That's going to mean we have less sunlight kind of blocking out your view. So try your luck. And now with our very last thing here in our planetarium, there is one thing that's been kind of missing from our sky. Anyone have a guess what that might be? We've talked a lot about the sun and the other stars. We found a few planets. Any guesses for another nighttime sight that we're just not seeing here in the sky? This one might be kind of tricky. Ooh. Oh, I see someone mentioning the Milky Way. Ooh, we can see if we can take a look at the Milky Way here before we wrap up. I can just barely start to see it here kind of in the middle of my screen, but it's really, really dark right now. Anything else? This one is a little bit closer to Earth than the Milky Way. I'm thinking about something that actually follows our planet going around the solar system. Nice. Yeah, I think that was a good clue there. So some of us are mentioning the moon. Yeah, anyone seeing the moon here in the sky right now? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Maybe a question mark if you're not sure. Taking a look all around, searching for it. Oh, I'm seeing a few N's pop in, a few no's, maybe a couple question marks. Not really seeing any yeses. So yeah, this Halloween, unfortunately, we're not going to have much moonlight coming into our sky. That's because the moon is coming up very, very late this year on Halloween. So no, last year on Halloween, we had a wonderful, bright full moon. Let's see if we can try to find the phase of the moon we're currently in, though. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead. We'll look and see if we can find the moon coming up from over here in the east. Let's go ahead and fast forward time. So the night is moving through, and go ahead and type in a letter S or that stop as soon as you see the moon pop up here. So let's see. Oh man, it is about 3. Well, I see some of us noticing these really bright stars. Yeah, they are super bright, but our moon should be even brighter. Oh, I see a bunch of stops there. Oh my goodness, good spotting there. I almost missed it. So our moon is right here looking pretty dark. So check out just how much of that moon is lit up. So for our last thing here in the planetarium tonight, I'm wondering if we can try to find which moon phase we'll be seeing. Maybe not so much Halloween night, it looks like, but instead the morning just after Halloween. So I have a few options here. And try taking a look. Let's see if I can maybe, it's not going to let me spin it too much. Try taking a look, giving me a guess here in chat. Which of those phases? We've got numbers 1 through 8 here. Which of those patterns, looking at the dark part and the lit up part, seem to match what we have in the sky the best? Ooh, this might be a tricky one. I see a few guesses coming in. We'll give others a moment here before we reveal. And so far, all my guesses for the most part seem to be for a crescent shape. So I am seeing a lot of crescents here. Great guesses there. So between 2 and 8. Now I'll go ahead and reveal. So for our morning after Halloween, we will be looking at a waning crescent moon coming up in the night sky really, really early in the morning. So about 6 a.m. is the time right now here in my planetarium. The moon came up just a few hours before. So if you were thinking number 8, well done there. That's another pat on the back for that observation. You're right. So a waning crescent. So that means we're getting closer to a new moon, which is going to be when the moon comes in between the sun and the earth. Not in perfect alignment, so we won't see a solar eclipse, but we will see that new moon, or I should say we won't see that new moon really, because the lit up side of our moon will be facing away from our earth the next few days. So we'll have to wait a few more days as time goes by. We'll start to see the other side of our moon starting to light up as we go from that new moon to our waxing crescent and down the phases until we reach a full moon a few weeks from now. So we won't have the moonlight to help guide us during our trick-or-treating this year. So with that, scientists, be sure to stay safe as you're out trick-or-treating. Have a fun time taking a look to see if you can try spotting some of the planets we mentioned, some of the constellations to look for, and share with the family and friends you're out with all that fun history you've now learned about how Halloween is really a holiday all about space. I'm going to go ahead and pass things back over to Haley because I just am so excited to get to these questions I've been seeing come into chat.
Yes, so we've got lots of really fantastic questions, and I'm going to go ahead and tackle the first one on our end, and that is, can we go back and watch some of this exciting class in the recording? And the answer is yes, it will be available on our YouTube page. So definitely feel free to check that out, as well as some of the other exciting past classes where we've gotten to explore a little bit more of the solar system with the Pacific Science Center. Now, the next question that we had was around holidays in general and their relationship to the planets, the stars, the world around us. So are there any other holidays that have a little more to do with the solar system than we might think?
Oh, that is a good question. Yeah, I can't think of any other holidays that are very, very specifically tied to the constellations. We do have a lot of space themed things happening though throughout the year, right? So thinking about our changing seasons and some seasonal celebrations we have. One favorite thing that we had last year, if anyone was watching any of the Planetarium shows, we did have two planets get really, really close together, Saturn and Jupiter having a conjunction. And in the sky, that made them look really, really bright. And actually, astronomers wonder if that astronomical phenomenon, these two planets coming close together, is what inspired the tale of the Christmas star. So this really bright star up in the sky. So while I can't think of any holidays as perfect as Halloween, as far as tying to astronomy, little bits of astronomy are kind of sprinkled out in very random places in our daily lives.
Wow, that is so cool. And I know we got a little bit of an introduction to at least a couple of times throughout the year where we reference back to the stars as well. Now, for our next question, we have a member of our live studio audience who is joining us from our school at home or our after school programs. Arthur, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
So when stars are born in nebulas, do they stay there or do they wander away? And if not, can they become a supernova there?
Ooh, that is a good question. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Orion, the constellation, which is a great example of a place in the sky that has a nebula. And you're right, nebulas are indeed the places where stars are born. So nebulas are sort of these clouds of gases, and those gases are the building blocks of our stars. Stars don't necessarily stay in that nebula. So they can stay in kind of these clusters or they can kind of spread out. A lot of that depends on some things around them. So different objects that might be enforcing gravity that can push and pull them away. That question about a supernova, though, that can indeed happen towards the end of some stars' life cycles. So for stars that are just the right star, once they've gone through their full life cycle, they've used up all the fuel they have, they can indeed go into a huge explosion we call a supernova. And actually, after a supernova, a couple things could happen. We could see a black hole form, or if the star is the right size, all of those gases and bits of energy from the star left behind can turn back into a nebula. So nebulas are where stars are born, and then stars can become nebulas in this kind of continuous circle.
Very cool. And with all of these wonderful and sometimes specific questions around the solar system, we had many students who asked us whether the Planetarium virtual platform that you were using or any other tools that could be used to explore the solar system are available to them at home that they could use on their computers. So what suggestions do you have for how students at home in front of their computers can learn a little more about the things we learned about today?
Yeah, so I was actually using a couple programs today that are free to use for the public. One of those programs is called Stellarium. So Haley, if we can link that maybe in the description on YouTube, because it's such a fun program. I really recommend that one for like our night sky view. So thinking about those constellations and like the moon phases and all that. You can actually download it right on your phone and go out walking and use it as a map to help you find those stars. We also have a platform I was using called NASA Eyes. And so NASA Eyes is another great program that is free to use. And honestly, if you are really interested in some of the more deep space or even here in our own solar system, but getting further away than just our night sky, I really recommend taking a look at NASA's space resources and also taking a look at some of our past planetarium shows.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fatima. And we had another really great question around just generally speaking, things that we can learn from looking at the stars. So anything else outside of the holiday related themes that we've spoken about today?
Yeah, other things we can learn by looking at the stars. Ooh, that is a great question. We've actually learned some pretty exciting things by making some observations of the night sky. For example, thinking about our own planet and where we're located, a lot of that has come from observations, seeing how things kind of move around in our night sky. We've also learned quite a bit about even further away things. So using not just our own naked eyes, but thinking about telescopes, we've been able to discover some really exciting things like those nebulas, learning more about how stars were formed, maybe how our galaxies and planets once were formed, all by making those observations. And actually, if you're really interested in some upcoming really cool observations, we do potentially have a new telescope launching here in December, hopefully, fingers crossed. And that new telescope is going to be super, super powerful. So who knows what exciting observations it will be helping us explore.
Well, that is so cool. And hopefully we'll get to see more of those details in a future StarCourse with you. In the meantime, we're about where we need to be on time, but I would love to have Nolan come up on screen and ask just one more question from our live studio audience. So Nolan, take it away.
Why does the moon move a few centimeters away from the Earth every year?
Oh, that is a good question. Yeah, has anyone heard that? So the moon is slowly moving away from Earth, which is just so sad. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to the moon within our lifetime. But Nolan, to think about your question, there's a few things happening. One thing has to do with what keeps the moon trapped around here in Earth's orbit. So thinking about a force called gravity, right? And so that gravity is going to cause the moon to kind of get pulled around the Earth, keeping it in that orbital motion. And as the moon's gravity is keeping it in Earth's orbit, it's also interacting with our own oceans, actually. So that push and pull coming from our tides. And that pushing and pulling on the moon causes something called friction. And actually, scientists, you can try testing out some friction at home by rubbing your two hands together, just the palm of your hands. As you do, what do you start to notice? Might start to notice some things heating up. So that's that energy coming off of that friction. And so out in space, that energy is a lot stronger, and it's going to cause a little bit of a push from our moon, like Nolan mentioned, centimeter by centimeter, slowly pushing our natural satellite away from us.
Wow. And I know we are about out of time, but we had one final question that I want to make sure we address. We had some students who are wondering, I know you mentioned this briefly, but just as a quick reminder, what would be the next big solar event or event that students can look to space to learn more about that they should be on the lookout for over the next couple of months?
Yeah, I think going into this season, the one to get really excited about is going to be our winter solstice. So that's going to be happening in a few months in December. So remember that path our planet is taking around the orbit. We're about to be getting to the longest night of our year, which I know for those of us who really love summer and the sunshine, it can kind of be a bit of a bummer. But if you are wanting to see some cool stuff in astronomy, the longest night of the year is a really great opportunity to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I will certainly be on the lookout myself, and I'm sure many of the students tuning in will be as well. Thank you so much once again for joining us, Fatima, and to the entire team at the Pacific Science Center. We hope to see everybody back at another Varsity Tutors StarCourse soon, but in the meantime, we look forward to seeing all of those selfies on Instagram. So thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget to tag us.
Thanks, everyone.